All right, welcome back to week 3 of Over the Line. As you can see, it's just me this week. We're recording this on Thursday as the Thursday night game between the Giants and Niners is going on. Niners are currently up 3-0 early in the first quarter. They had a good drive. Going down the field, leaned on McCaffrey heavy. I think that's something that we all expected. So I'm going to this is a solo episode. We had some scheduling conflicts. I'm sure it had nothing to do with these boys getting it done against Cleveland. I'm sure it has nothing to do with that. Giants are playing right now. Chris has an excuse. He is holding on for dear life as his Giants play the Niners. I actually said before this game started that I think it's going to be a closer game than people anticipate. The line was set at Niners minus 11, I believe, coming into today. And right before the game, it was Niners favored by 10, I believe. So the line has come down a little bit. I think it's going to come down to a one-possession game. I don't think it's going to be 10. I think Niners will end up winning this game, but I think it's going to be closer. I think it's going to be a touchdown, maybe even less. So we'll do a quick recap of the game. Since it's just me, I'm just going to kind of fire through them and give my thoughts on it, and then just kind of move on. Give a quick preview of this coming week, which is in the next couple days. So we had the Eagles beating the Vikings last Thursday, I believe it was, 34-28. The Vikings can't win the close games. Chris and I touched on this in one of the earlier episodes this season, but the Vikings are going to have trouble repeating what they did last year if they're going to have one-score games consistently against good teams. It's going to be tough to win. I like Kirk. I believe he's second in the league right now in passing yards. He's got Jefferson. He's got Addison. They just signed Cam Akers because they have no faith in Madison whatsoever. He's already fumbled the ball, I believe, twice this season. So it'll be interesting to see how they mix those two together. I think Madison still has a ton of potential, but maybe being running back one and having all of the carries isn't exactly what he's ready for. I think Akers comes in, takes a little bit of pressure off him. That helps their running game. Minnesota can score points. We know that. But the problem is they can't stop anyone. Even when the Eagles weren't at their best, which, they played a great game. They had a lot of rushing yards. DeAndre Swift absolutely went off. DeAndre Swift finished with 28 carries, 175 yards, and a touchdown. Just an absolute fucking have-a-day kid. I wasn't sure about that signing when they brought him in. I know Swift has a lot of talent, but Philadelphia already ran the ball extremely well. They had a lot of backs. They still have Boston Scott, Rashad Penny. Neither guys that are bell cows, but they are very, very decent backs. Hurts carries the ball, I believe, around 10 times a game. So you have all those things. They're going to be able to run the football on you. So if you give them a lead, it's going to be tough to come back from that. So that's Philadelphia 34, Vikings 28. Devontae Smith had himself a game. Shout out to Devontae Smith. AJ Brown was having a full-blown meltdown while they were up 14 on the sideline. Diva wide receivers, you love to see it. We got one ourselves, so I love myself a good Diva wide receiver. The Bills, they bounced back against the Raiders 38-10. This was a must-win game for Buffalo. They came out, did exactly what they had to do. Maybe my prediction of X team is a Super Bowl team if they have Jimmy Garoppolo. It's starting to look less and less likely. Josh Jacobs getting absolutely stuffed on the ground. They're going to have a tough time winning games if Josh Jacobs is going to have 9 carries for minus 2 yards. That's a tough day at the office for Josh Jacobs. Garoppolo, 16 of 24 for $185, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. It's not good enough. It is just not good enough. Against a Buffalo team that needed a win, I wasn't expecting much out of Vegas. But if you want to be able to compete in the upper echelon of the AFC, you have to put up a better fight against a Buffalo team that's struggling to find their identity. Josh Allen has turned the ball over at a rate that only he knows how to do. It's Brett Favre-like, where he can give you a ton of touchdowns and he can give you a ton of interceptions. But he is going to find a way to win the games he has to win. This was the game he had to win. He found a way to win it by a large margin. And I think Buffalo is just going to be, I think they'll be just fine. Josh and the Bills were my pick to come out of the AFC. I believe they're going to win the conference and go to the Super Bowl. First couple weeks, it was looking a little bit shaky, first week, it was looking a little bit shaky. They bounced back against the Raiders in week 2. It's exactly what they needed. That gets them on the right path, get the ball rolling a little bit, be able to run the ball a little more efficiently, and I think the Bills will be just fine. Ravens edge out the Bengals 27-24. Bengals offense so bad in the first half. I believe Joe Burrow had sub 50 yards going into halftime. The only reason I know that is because I did have a bet for Joe Burrow to go for 253. I believe he finished with 240 something. So they just could not get anything going on offense until the second half. He finished 27-41 for 222 yards. Joe Mixon has yet to really do anything this year. They're going to need more production out of him if they want to be able to compete. They don't have Samaje Perine anymore, so they're going to have to lean heavily on the guy that they depend on, which is Joe Mixon, and he's going to need to make some plays. Joe Burrow straight up just has not played good enough. He's not playing up to his contract right now. He had the calf injury throughout training camp and the preseason, so first week or two of action, he's finally, it seemed in that second half, he started to get into a Joe Burrow-like rhythm that we expect to see from him. So I think that he's going to pick it up. He'll still finish statistically as one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL at the end of the year. Cincinnati's going to be just fine. I have them to win the division. I still believe in that. I know Baltimore's 2-0, Cleveland's 1-1, Pittsburgh's 1-1, Cincinnati's 0-2. They're probably plus money now to win the division. I am still holding on to, I believe Cincinnati wins the division, and it's going to be closer than I imagined for the 2 spot. I have Pittsburgh to finish second in the division and make the playoffs. It's going to be a lot closer than I imagined. I underestimated how Baltimore was going to come out this year. Lamar looks great. He's completing passes at a high rate. He's not taking the type of risks that we're used to seeing from him. They finally have a receiving core. Of course, Odell gets hurt already. He's out. You could see Zay Flowers is already making his mark. I love what I'm seeing from Zay Flowers. Not just because I have him on fantasy, but I do think that he is going to be a big factor in how their season plays out. Especially, we don't know how Odell's injury is. We don't know exactly how Odell's injury is going to be. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out as the weeks come on. He's not a guy that you can rely on. They went to him, I believe, 8 times at the beginning of that game. And, he was targeted 4 times before he got hurt and went out. I don't know if you can rely on him that heavily. Nelson Aguilar led the team in receptions. I feel like Baltimore wants that to be Mark Andrews. I think you want Mark Andrews to lead you in receptions going forward. Zay Flowers is going to be a close second. It's interesting to see how that team's going to play out. Dobbins is on the IR, obviously, so they're going to lean heavily on kind of running back by committee. So Baltimore 27, Cincinnati 24, Chiefs 17, Jaguars 9. A game that we all thought was going to be one of the most entertaining games of the week turned out to be an absolute fucking dud. I don't have much else to say other than this game did not live up to the hype and the expectations that we all assumed that it would. Patrick Mahomes found a way to win. Are we surprised? He starts 0-1. He finds a way to win the next game against Jacksonville, a team that a lot of people are high on, including myself. But we're talking about Patrick Mahomes here. This is a guy who knows how to win these type of games that he's supposed to win. Much like Josh Allen, these upper echelon quarterbacks know how to win the close games. Once again, the Buffalo game wasn't close, but it was a must-win game. I feel even though it was 1 week into the season, 0-1 for Kansas City, they wanted to win, not necessarily needed, but this was a game that was very important for them to win. They got it done 17-9, Kansas City over Jacksonville. Tennessee beats the Chargers in overtime 27-24. The Chargers cannot find a way to win. They can score with anyone. Their defense cannot make the plays it needs to make to be competitive in the later stages of the game. If you're going to look, I know Eckler was hurt and they had to rely heavily on Joshua Kelly. I think Joshua Kelly had somewhere between 10 to 20 carries. I mean, they gave him a ton of carries. It didn't pan out the way that fantasy managers thought that it might. I know he was one of the number one waiver wire pickups this week. It didn't pan out the way people thought. Herbert's throwing the ball 40 times a game. Without Eckler, they are not going to win on a consistent basis. Because even if they get that lead, they can't sustain it because their defense can't hold. So if you can't burn the clock with a solid run game, it's going to be very, very tough to win against teams who are scrappy. And the Titans are scrappy. I don't think the Titans are any fucking good. I think they're scrappy, though. They're well coached. I like Vrabel. He's a guy that you would want to play for. Tannehill is the definition of a game manager. If he throws, like he did in week 1, 3 interceptions, you're obviously going to lose because he does not have the ability to come back from that. But he's also the type of guy who can throw no interceptions, 250 yards, a touchdown, and will just slowly and methodically move down the field until they kick a field goal. I mean, that's Tennessee Titans football in a nutshell right there. So props to the Titans for getting that's a big win. The Chargers, almost called them San Diego, but the Chargers, they need to figure out what the fuck they have going on defense. To give up 27 points to this Titans team is unacceptable. For any team that considers them to be a playoff-bound team, that's unacceptable. 27-24 Titans get the win. Falcons-Packers on a very, very late field goal by Younghoe Koo. I thought the Packers were going to get this done. I mean, I bought in on AJ's hype of Jordan Love. I still think Jordan Love is a more than serviceable quarterback, and the Packers are in great hands for the future. They were missing Aaron Jones. They had to rely on AJ Dillon. I believe Christian Watson was also out. It's going to be tough if you let the Falcons run the ball as efficiently as they ran the ball. I mean, they have two. Algiers a great running back, and we're only starting to see what Bijan can truly be. And I think that he is going to be a force in this league as a running back for, the foreseeable future. Running backs don't have long tenure, but I do believe that Bijan is going to be that guy for quite some time. He had 19 carries for 124 yards against a stingy Green Bay defense. That's really, really impressive for a rookie running back to come out there and be a bell cow like that. Falcons are going to rely more and more on him as the season goes on. They're 2-0 right now. I know that's not something that I would have anticipated coming into week 2. I was not a believer in the Falcons whatsoever. I still don't think that they're going to win that division, but they're more competitive than I gave them credit for, much like the Ravens. It's a team that I slept on quite a bit. They're doing the right thing. They're taking the ball out of Ritter's hands, and they're giving it to Bijan and Algier, and they're winning the game on the ground. So all credit to them. Jordan Love had 14 completions for $150 and 3 touchdowns. One of the most confusing stat lines that I've ever seen. It's so efficient, yet not nearly good enough. $150, you have to move the ball more efficiently than that. 3 touchdowns and no picks, you're going to find it hard to complain about that. You give me Kenny Pickett with that stat line, and I will march up and down the field telling you that Kenny Pickett is a Pro Bowler. So a little bit biased there. I expected the Packers to win that game. I really did. I thought this was a game where they could prove that they were legit. And they fell short. It was a great game all in all. Came down to a last-second field goal. Can't fault them for that. Possibly the game of the week. Seahawks beating the Lions 37-31. My Seahawks that I had projected to win their division, they finally bounced back. Geno Smith has a great game, throws for 330 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. This was the type of game that I was hoping to see from Geno. This was the Geno that we got at the end of the season last year. And Kenneth Walker was a beast. I mean, he didn't have a ton of yards. I think he finished with around 50 or so yards, but he finds the end zone. Any other Kenneth Walker fantasy managers will know that this was the type of game that you have been looking for. Well, we got it. I know we're only 2 weeks in, so we don't want to overreact, but this is big. This was a big, big game for the Seahawks. The Lions were rolling. They're the hottest team in football. Everybody's on the bandwagon, myself included. I absolutely love the Lions. Goff had a great game. He had that one interception, but aside from that, Lions played a great game. This was just one that came down to whoever was going to have the ball last, and it turned out Seattle got it done in overtime. Shout out to the Seahawks, 37-31. Great victory. Colts, 31-20. This game won me some money. I'm an Anthony Richardson believer. I know that he got hurt in that game, and Gardner Minshew had to come in and absolutely chewed up the Texans' defense. A lot of talking heads were talking about whether Gardner Minshew is the best number 2 quarterback in the league. Well, we don't have a lot to go off of week 2, but he showed that he's in the conversation. I mean, him and Jameis. I'm a Jameis lover. I know that's not a popular opinion, much like my Baker take from years past. That take only gets better with time, much like wine. Baker is aging finely, as is. I believe that if something were to happen to Derek Carr, Jameis Winston could step in, and he's going to take more risks than Carr is. The ugliest Monday night game on the early 7:15 slate. We'll get to that later, but I mean, just a real pain to watch that game. No efficiency in the first half from either team. We'll get to that, but just I'm not fully bought in on Derek Carr on the Saints. I think that team is more dangerous with Jameis Winston. But barring injury or anything like that, this is Derek Carr's team. But I digress. Colts 31-20 over the Texans. Anthony Richardson goes out with a concussion. It's going to happen when you run the ball like that. I mean, he scored 2 touchdowns on the ground, carried the ball. He only carried the ball 3 times. He scored twice. Extremely, extremely efficient runner. But when you run like that, these type of things can happen. And if he's going to be the guy for Indianapolis going forward, they're going to try to limit him. And that's going to limit the type of player he is. You see it right now with Chicago and Justin Fields. Last year, when they finally started letting Justin Fields run the ball, he was extremely efficient. And now it looks like a real issue in Chicago because they're trying to make him what he's not, and that's a pocket passer. So we're going to roll right in to Chicago, Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay getting the victory, 27-17. Shake and bake. Shout out Baker Mayfield. All the Baker truthers. Drop a comment down below. Let me know if you're still riding the Baker train. I mean, the efficiency levels have been crazy. I know week 1 he didn't throw for a ton of yards. He only had 100 or so, 150 yards or so in week 1. Comes back with 300 plus, throws a touchdown, no interceptions, quarterback rating of 114.5. I mean, Baker has just been everything that the Buccaneers need him to be. He's not doing more than he needs to. He's doing just enough. Their defense is playing at an all-time level. Oh, and a great sack by Bosa on the 1-yard line. It is 3-3 with 36 seconds left in the first quarter. Giants are pinned on their own 1-yard line now. A huge sack from Bosa. They're in a tough spot. So back to this game. Fields looked terrible. I watched a couple film breakdowns of Justin Fields, and it just looks like he said it himself probably better than I could. It looks like he's doing too much thinking and not enough play. He's sitting in the pocket, he's looking down his targets, and he's not making the throws. He's not reading it quick enough to where he can make a decisive decision, plant his foot in the ground, and rip it. He said he's going to play more loose this week. I'm incredibly excited to see what he can do if he takes the reins off of himself. We all know what he's capable of with his feet. I think you need to get him out of the pocket more. And I think he does that on his own, whether they call it for him or not. I think this week he takes matters into his own hands. He gets out of the pocket, makes some plays. But that team's going to be bad. I mean, they are going to finish towards the bottom. They're going to be 25th or worse in the league. I mean, it's things are not bright in Chicago right now. I know Chicago fans are not happy to hear that, but it's the truth of the matter. I don't know if it's more scheme or more Fields, but what they're doing right now is not working. I know Chase Claypool, he had a little bit better of a blocking game, a couple nice catches. If he's going to be your go-to guy, you got real problems. Trust me. Trust me. If he's your go-to guy, you got real fucking problems. Buccaneers 27, Bears 17. Giants, huge comeback victory, down 20 at halftime to win 31-28 over Arizona in Arizona. The Giants in the first half looked fucking terrible. They looked like the Giants that played the Cowboys. But then Daniel Jones said, fuck this. I'm taking matters into my own hands. This is embarrassing. We're losing to the fucking Arizona team who doesn't even have Kyler Murray. They got Josh Dobbs starting at quarterback. James Conner's running all over you. Your defense has no pride whatsoever. So he decides, fuck this. I'm doing it myself. I'm going to carry us to a win. I know Chris was excited. We had talked briefly after that win, and I was excited to hear his take on the game. We'll touch on it in next week's episode, because I know right now he's too locked in for the game. I'd call him right now to try to get his thoughts, but just an absolute big-time must-have-it win against a bad team. I personally don't think the Giants are a good team, but they're supposed to beat a team like Arizona. So we'll touch more on that when we have Chris in here next week, but a huge win. Steelers are 1-1, Giants are 1-1, Cleveland's 1-1. The podcast right now is sitting pretty. I don't think Chris or I expected to be in this position in week 2, but here we are. 31-28, Giants get the win. Niners over the Rams, 30-23. Rams look great early. Got out to an early lead. Puka Nacua, fantasy player of the year possibly so far. It'll be interesting to see if they can maintain that once Cooper Kupp gets back. They traded away Cam Akers. They were relying heavily on Kyron Williams. The Rams team is interesting to me. They're 1-1, but it's a weird 1-1, right? Like Stafford has the ability to will you to win, and then he kind of falls apart towards the end of the game. He had a couple bad interceptions. I like Stafford. I like the Rams, but I don't think they're going to be a real factor down the line. San Francisco right now is just a team that nobody wants to fuck with. Giants are holding their own 3-3 at the start of the second quarter. This game, like I said, this game's going to be a lot closer than people think, but I do think San Francisco gets the win. I think they roll to 3-0. Brock Purdy looks really, really, really comfortable in the pocket. He's playing without Ayuk tonight. He's got to rely heavily on Debo, Kittle, and McCaffrey. You have to just let those guys do what they're paid to do. The Niners defense, unreal. They're going to keep them in games that when their offense is struggling, the defense is gonna hold their weight. So I like the Niners down the road. I think they're going to be a team that a lot of us are going to have to look out for. And speaking of teams that people are going to have to look out for, I hate to admit it, the Cowboys are good. I said it. The Cowboys are good. I don't like it any more than you do, but the Cowboys are good. I mean, they have Dak Prescott at quarterback, and I'm still scared of them. That's how good their defense is. That's how good Micah Parsons is. That's how good Tony Pollard is. That's how good CeeDee Lamb is. They have these pieces that you can put together, and man, right now they are just rolling. I know they played a Jets team who they're struggling to figure out exactly what their offensive identity is. Their defense is supposed to be solid, but you can only do so much when you turn the ball over. And Zach Wilson, fuck did he turn the ball over. I don't know what to make of the Jets right now. I know they squeaked out the win in week 1, but it's not sustainable to have Zach Wilson only have 12 completions and 3 interceptions. That's just not sustainable. It's not a winning formula. Breece Hall, after the game he had in week 1, where every time he touched the ball, it seemed like he might take it to the house, had 4 carries. I mean, someone explain to me how it could possibly make sense that Zach Wilson had 5 carries and Breece Hall had 4 fucking carries after the game he had in week 1. Rely on your run game if you're the Jets right now. You have to take pressure off of Zach Wilson, establish the run, play action, get him moving out of the pocket, make him comfortable, give him easy throws. The Jets are just not putting themselves in a position to win. Granted, they played, unfortunately, what is widely considered to be one of the best teams in football in the Dallas Cowboys. And I know my boy Jakey Hobbs will love that, but it pains me to say it, but it just is what it is. And now a 2-0 team who I am not sold on whatsoever still after 2 weeks of winning. The Commanders beat the Broncos 35-33. Is this quite possibly the most fraudulent 2-0 in recent history? I'm coming off sounding like a hater, but I got to be real with you. I do not believe in the Commanders going forward. What I would have said last week is the Commanders can rely on a great defense that they have. You cannot give up 33 points to a Denver team that just has no idea what they're doing. Russell Wilson looked a little bit more competent, but this is not a team that's going to be any threat going down the line. The Commanders consider themselves to be a competitive team. I would consider them to be a scrappy team. I'm not ready to jump to competitive. I think they're a team that if Pittsburgh plays them 10 times, Pittsburgh wins 7 of those games. So whatever that means, I'm not 100% sure because I don't believe that Pittsburgh's a good team. We'll get to that game. I think, honestly, it's very comparable, Pittsburgh and Washington right now. It's a 2-0 and 1-1 that are much closer than you would think. I do not believe that team has longevity going forward with Sam Howell at quarterback. Once again, it'll be a storyline that I'm watching, but Commanders get the job done. Look, I'm not going to take away from their win. They get a win in Denver, 35-33. Congrats to them. The Dolphins. I mean, Sunday Night Football. Tua looked great. Bill Belichick had a plan to shut down Tyreek, and it just did not matter. Mike McDaniel's scheme and his play calling is so efficient. Raheem Mostert ran the ball great. Their skill players are just so fast that you just have to hope and pray. Once they get into open field, you just got to hope and pray. And Belichick did a great job of shutting down Tyreek for the most part. But Tua is an efficient passer. He's going to find his targets. He's going to do what he has to do to win the game. And he did just that. I mean, he completed 21 of 30 passes. Waddle had a great game. I mean, Mostert finished with 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. So if you can get that kind of production out of your running back room if you're Miami, I think you feel great about your chances late into the season. They're going to start to rely heavily on that run game as we get towards the playoffs. And if they can tote the rock like that, man, Miami is a team that you do not want to fuck with. Speaking personally, that's not a team that I want to see near or in the playoffs. Miami gets the victory 24-17 over New England. They move to 2-0 while New England moves to 0-2. If you would have told me that 5 years ago, I would have told you were fucking crazy. And then the last 2 games of the week, New Orleans and Carolina. New Orleans squeaks out a victory 20-17. Touched on it a little bit earlier, but they just had no offensive synergy. I believe it was 6-3 going into halftime. Ugly, 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 sloppy game. If you're a fan of either team, this was just a tough watch. You did it because you had to. I give you all the respect in the world because that's not something I could have put myself through. I was sitting there waiting for the Browns-Steelers game to start, refusing to put the Saints-Panthers game on the TV beforehand. I would rather watch the pregame coverage of the Browns-Steelers. And the Steelers get it done. 26-22, leaning on the defense to get a victory. I know there's a lot of Browns fans who are just sulking this week. The Nick Chubb injury is absolutely devastating. Hated to see that. Minka is not a dirty player, but that hit it's hard to find a defense for it, because if you look at it in slow motion, it is low. It's right at the knee. You would love to see him hit that on the upper thigh. A guy like Nick Chubb isn't a guy that you can tackle high. You have to go low on him. I completely understand that. Um, it's one of those really, really unfortunate things where you lose a superstar and it hurts the league, much like the Aaron Rodgers injury. It does the league no good. Even as a Steelers fan, and it increasing our chances going forward, I just absolutely hate that for Nick. I hate it for the league. Hell of a player, great guy from what we can tell. I believe he came back from a really, really rough knee injury in college. I believe and I hope that he can do the same thing once again. I know Minka was incredibly apologetic about how things went down, but like you said, he wouldn't redo it. He went low on a guy that you have to go low on. Unfortunately, hit right on the knee. I would love to hear my co-host take on that, but they're not here for week 3, so this is, you just get me. So unfortunately, the only take you have from this podcast is that Minka's not a dirty player, but that's that I have trouble finding a defense for that particular hit. I know Browns fans are not going to like that, and it is what it is. This is the game of football. It's a physical game. If you never played football, then you don't understand how fast the game is, and when you're diving trying to make a tackle, you're not thinking about am I hitting him in a spot that could hurt him. I mean, that's the least of your concerns. You're thinking about preserving yourself and making the play more than anything. He ended up making the play, but it's incredibly unfortunate. The story of this game was Pittsburgh's defense. Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, all up in the ass of the Cleveland offensive line that coming into the season was rated as one of the best offensive lines in the league. I mean, obviously the injury to Conklin is huge. Sucks to see that as well. The Myles Garrett, TJ Watt comparisons, they got to stop. They got to stop. They cannot be compared. TJ Watt, and I say this with all sincerity, is on a completely different level than Myles Garrett. You finish that game with 1 tackle, 1 quarterback pressure, no hits, no sacks, no tackle for loss, completely ineffective from whistle to whistle against a Steelers offensive line that was rated 22nd coming into this year. We have one great anchor in James Daniels who hasn't given up a sack all year. Hometown kid, love it, love to see it. But this isn't what the Cleveland Browns offensive line was projected to be. We were projected to be much, much, much worse, and we're doing more with less. TJ Watt, it doesn't matter if you double him, if you chip him, he's going to get back there. He's going to make the play in space. He's going to bat the ball down. Highsmith takes a lot of pressure off of TJ because you also have to worry about him coming off the other edge, which teams are starting to figure out that Highsmith is legit. He's going to be a Pro Bowler this year because there's so much attention put on TJ that Highsmith is going to be able to get to the backfield. He's going to make plays like he did against Cleveland. Deshaun, if this Browns team wants to be competitive moving forward, I know they just signed Kareem Hunt after the Nick Chubb injury. Great signing. Knows the offense, catch the ball out of the backfield, runs hard. I love everything about that signing for the Browns. But if they want to be competitive going towards the end of the season this year, Deshaun has to play half as good as the contract they gave him. Point blank period, Deshaun is not playing good enough. The first pick six, first play of the game, was not on Deshaun. I'm going to give him a pass for that with the caveat of a good quarterback puts that here. So, yes, was it outside of the ideal window that you would want? Yeah. Was he trying to lead his tight end receiver? Yes. Did it bounce off of Harrison Bryant's hands when he should have caught that ball? Absolutely. He was given a prime opportunity to make a play. He did not. They tried to give Deshaun just a quick and easy completion to start the game. The game starts on just a terrible note. I know Browns fans were complaining about the penalties throughout the game. A lot of those, if you just want me to be completely honest, as San Francisco scores a touchdown, they will be up 10-3 with 7:49 left to play in the half. Um, my honest take on the penalties is 90% of those were self-inflicted. You have Deshaun double face mask. The pass interference on the last play of the game, I agree, was definitely defensive pass interference. The problem with that is Deshaun threw an uncatchable ball. I mean, it was not even close to the target. If that ball was more catchable, they throw that flag. I believe that. There's not some greater conspiracy against the Cleveland Browns. I hate to break it to Browns fans, but much like us, we're not that important. There's no greater conspiracy to keep the Cleveland Browns fans down because that doesn't do the league any good. You guys just did not play up to the caliber that I expected, you expected. I think a lot of the fans watching the game, Pittsburgh's going to play up to Cleveland. They're not as bad as we are, and we're bad. Don't get it twisted. Our offense is dog shit. Our defense is the only thing that's going to keep us in games moving forward. Kenny Pickett looks, I don't want to be too harsh on him, but he does not have the progression that I was hoping to see from him coming into this year. The things that we saw from this offense in the preseason are not what we're seeing now, and they got to figure some shit out. They're having an identity crisis on offense, whether that's wholly connected to Matt Canada or not. Time will only tell because he does not have much longer before an organization like ours, who is not known for firing people, will tell him he's got to pack his bags, unfortunately. Or the only other alternative is they keep him, but he's not making the calls. He's just scheming. I don't even like that. Look, I don't like Matt Canada, much like most of the Pittsburgh fan base. I do not believe that he is in the best interest of our team going forward. You have to be able to get Kenny out of the pocket. Najee is Trent Richardson. We touched on that before. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to limit his touches. Warren needs the majority of touches. The explosiveness, the vision, he's just leaps and bounds better than Najee right now. Sure, Najee was the better prospect. Najee had a great rookie year. But what we're seeing out of him right now is not enough. And hopefully that giving Jaylen Warren more touches will spark something in Najee to where he can kind of figure out what he needs to do. He's got to be more decisive in the backfield. I talked about this last week. His indecisiveness is killing us. It's almost looked like he's trying to lose a yard on every time he touches the ball. Now, he finished with 40 yards because he had two rushes of 20 yards. He had 6 yards going into the third quarter. So I'll leave it at that. Steelers got the win like I did not expect them to do. Once halftime hit, I could see how the tides were turning. Obviously, Cleveland losing Chubb is absolutely devastating. So you had to imagine that was going to have some effect on the game. Did it affect the way the rest of the team played? I'm not sure. I don't know where I fall in that. I do know that it was tough for them to get anything going after that. Ford looked great. They signed Hunt, like I said. I think that's going to be big for them going forward. They're going to need Deshaun to play better. They're going to need to scheme some things up to him for him to get him into a rhythm. Myles Garrett's going to have to cause some turnovers. Their defense is going to have to play the way they did against Cincinnati. If they want to be a playoff team, their defense is going to have to carry them to that. Much like Pittsburgh, whose offense is so abysmal that if we want any chance moving forward, we're going to need to get a lot out of our defense. So we've got the Raiders on Sunday night. The Browns will be playing the 1 o'clock game against the Titans, which will be a very, very interesting matchup. Titans have limited both teams they've played to field goals and not letting them score. Vrabel plays a tight, stingy defense. Once again, the Titans are just going to kick 1,000 field goals on you. I think that's probably going to be a pretty ugly game. The Browns are going to try to get into a rhythm. Hopefully, for AJ's sake and the Browns fandom, they're able to establish sort of a run game to take some of that relief and anxiety away from the fans of, oh, the season's over because we don't have Nick Chubb. I don't want to hear any of that crybaby bullshit. If you're willing to give up in week 2, then you guys aren't the fan base that I thought you were, that I've always given you the credit for being. I mean, you stick by this team through thick and thin. If you're going to give up on them after week 2, that says more about you than it does about them. I'm really interested to see if Pittsburgh gets a win against Vegas on Sunday night, then we got something cooking. But the offense is going to need to step up. Point blank period, the offense they have to hold their weight. Kenny's got to be able to move the ball down the field. And honestly, with Matt Canada at the helm, we just got to hope and pray for the best. If you're a Steelers fan, just hold on. Just hold on for the ride. It's going to be bumpy, I tell you that. I wish us the best. That's all I can say. Giants are playing against the Niners right now. Like I said, they're down 10-3. Tons of pressure on Daniel Jones so far. Niners defensive line and edge rushers just are on fire. Jones was able to get that last ball out. 2nd and 10 with 7:35 left. They are down 10-3. And they're gonna need Daniel Jones to be a second half Daniel that he was against Arizona if they're gonna want to be competitive at the end of this game. So it's just me for this week. Sorry about that. Next week, hopefully, we have the whole crew and we're back to normal, and we can give you guys the show that you tune in for. So like, comment, subscribe. I just had to get this out there because I didn't want to leave you guys without an episode. So if you did watch through all of this, I appreciate you. Hopefully my takes weren't too bad for you and you didn't get tired of listening to just me speak. Next week, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming. Thank you for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. See you next week. Go Steelers.